way, I'd just firstly like to thank everyone for joining. It's great to see strong participation. That's awesome. We're proud to be supporting the FSC's new campaign that starts with action, an industry-wide initiative to help women across New Zealand grow their financial confidence and well-being. We're excited today to bring you our first in our webinar series, and it's been based around the unique needs women may face when investing. My name's Kelley and I'm the National Business Development and Service Manager at Trustees, and I've held a number of roles within finance firms over years, mostly focused on advice and financial planning. I'll let Anne Morrell, my co-presenter, introduce herself.
Thanks, Kelley, and welcome to everybody. It's lovely to see so many people have joined us today. So, as Kelley said, my name's Anne Morrell, and I have been in the finance industry for over 40 years now, which is a bit scary in itself. The last 20 plus years, I've been a certified financial planner, AFA, of course, and now an FA. And I've worked the last 4.5 years here at Trustees Executors. I think I've worked with many clients over the years, and I've made many friends along the way. And the joy of my career has always been those relationships that I've made, and being part of clients' financial milestones is a pleasure in itself. So and again, it's a pleasure to be here today talking to everyone who's present. Thank you.
Thanks, Anne. So today we're going to cover, I guess, we'll talk about some of the unique challenges women face when looking at their financial planning. Anne's going to cover how you can address some of those and what you should be looking at when you're planning yourself. Then Anne will also talk you through some investment options. And towards the end of the presentation, we've pulled out 2 key investment concepts that Anne is going to talk you through. The session will take about 45 minutes. Please use the Q&A tab to ask questions, and we will probably address those at the end, but we'll also be monitoring them through the session just to see if there's anything we need to address as we go along. So why is this so important? Last year, the FSC completed some research that's given us some real hard data to demonstrate that we have work to do. Out of the research, I think one of the things that shocked me the most was that 60% of those surveyed felt they had limited or no investment experience. And that's one of the things that I guess spurred us on to take part in the FSC campaign, and also ongoing, was to try and address results such as those. And we have some unique challenges, and these are just a few of them. Generally, over our lifetime, our working life, we'll earn less than our male counterparts, and there's a number of reasons for that. Research also tells us that women are generally more risk aware than men. It's a bit opposite, because I'd call it risk averse, but the flow-on impact of that is often that over women's investment lifetime, they will earn less of a return as well. And women live longer in retirement, so they need more funds. So there's real reasons there why you turning up today is really important. And we hope today that we're just going to give you some building blocks to help address those kinds of concerns. So I'll hand over to Anne now.
Thanks, Kelley. So yes, and as you can see there, where do you start? And it's make a plan. And having a plan for anything, it provides a roadmap of where you want to be, and it sets out the steps that you need to take, and the framework to review progress along the way to make sure that your plan is on track. And yes, so having a plan in the first instance is critically important. And how do you set that plan and setting your goals? And I think we've all seen the SMART acronym in the past. So making sure that your goals are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. And not all goals need to be big. or complicated. It might be just something as simple as saving for a holiday next year or updating your car in the medium term. But it's also really important to make sure that you do have goals for that long distance in the future. And well, I guess for some of us, it's a little bit sooner than others, but, making sure that you do plan for your retirement and that you understand what you need to do to get there. So thanks, Kelley. So when we think about a budget, I think most of us just cringe when we're asked to prepare a budget. And a budget doesn't have to be about restricting yourself. A budget is planning your spending. So it seems quite easy when we look at the points on this slide. What you need to do is write down all your forms of income, identify what all your regular expenses are, and average it all out and figure it all out. And it can seem quite easy, but for some people it can be quite difficult as well. There are many tools that you can use to do it. Some people they can set it out in a handwritten notebook, just set it, 2 columns aside, what comes in, what goes out, and add it up with the calculator. Or there are plenty of online options as well that people can use. And sorted.org is a wonderful resource for many, many, many different purposes. And I'd recommend, if you haven't had a play around their system, that you do. And when you think about your budget, it's also an opportunity to review exactly where you are spending your money. And one of the things I was having a talk with somebody about recently was, a morning coffee. If I did the calculation that if you purchased a coffee every work day for 48 weeks of the year, that's $1,200 that you spent on coffee. And scarily, even if you only bought 1 coffee per week, that's still $240. So I'm not saying that you need to skimp on the pleasures of life, and living is exactly that. It is about living. But I think doing a budget just actually allows you to set some priorities and to identify how and where you're spending. So once you've kind of sorted out your budget, it's really about how do you invest it? What are the things that you need to consider when you are investing your savings? And this is not a finite list, but I guess we put together a list of the things that we hear about most and people are even slightly aware of. So we can see term deposits, managed funds, KiwiSaver, microsaving investment platforms, etc. So term deposit, I think we all know what a term deposit is, and money in the bank for a fixed period of time at a fixed rate. It's pretty basic and easily understood, and certainly has a place in anybody's savings regime as well. Managed funds, if you're in a KiwiSaver, you are in a managed fund now. So your savings are pooled with other investors and managed by fund managers, and they invest across a range of different investment types, or assets is the common term that will be used when people are talking about managed funds as well. As I said, KiwiSaver is a form of managed fund, and it's a managed fund that is locked in until you're age 60, but it is accessible under certain conditions. And again, I think if you're in KiwiSaver, you're kind of aware of those things already. And if you are in KiwiSaver, again, it's about reviewing where you're at. Micro investing platforms, that they've been growing and been around for a wee while now. And, some examples of that are Sharesies and Flint, Invest Now, Hatch. They're just a few that come to mind immediately. These allow, I guess, a do-it-yourself approach to investing. Great way to start, and a great way to, I guess, get a kind of a feel for what does long-term investing look like, and what is the universe of investment options that are available in this space. The micro investing platforms have opened up a whole world of access for investors. The only rider I would attach to that is just don't forget about the value of advice and guidance along the way. And I would think that as funds grow, you potentially need more advice around where your funds are sitting. Direct investing is where you own shares or bonds directly in the company. So you're like a shareholder holder in a company, and these are often purchased via a share broker, or some of the micro platforms provide the facility to participate in this sector of the market as well. Then we have, of course, property, and property in this sense, as we put it here, is typically property that's outside of the family home or family use. So when people buy, a rental, residential rental property or into a commercial property, then that's kind of what we mean by property investment. Cryptocurrency, well, that's a whole other realm, and my disclosure here is I don't know a great deal about investing in cryptocurrency. It's been around for a wee while now, and it's certainly not for the faint-hearted. It's deemed to be high risk and highly volatile, and any investment in cryptocurrency should be undertaken with a lot of due diligence and understanding of how it works. But all of these investment assets, they all have their own range of risks that are attached to them, and understanding how they work is step one. So undertake due diligence as you're looking at where you want to invest your funds, and that means talking to experts, and an expert might not be your neighbour or your third cousin or the person that you met down at golf. So do the research and understand where you're investing your funds.
Then raised some really good points. I am, however, interested in what you've learned about managing your own budget over the years.
Yes, I guess as an ex-banker, I was very, very typical in the sense that I had accounts for everything. I had a box for everything. So I'd work out how much I needed each payday to cover all the household bills, so that I knew that was sorted. So that was in one account. And then if I was saving for something in particular, I would say a holiday, I would have that in a separate account so that I could contribute to it regularly. I'd also keep, and I still do keep, a separate sort of account that I chip into that covers off dental bills and vet bills and those sorts of things. So I've always kind of got an emergency fund on hand if I need that as well. And I make sure that all of these things, and including my superannuation, in fact, I should have said that up front, my superannuation savings I take out of my pay first. So that's my first deduction, if you like, from my weekly or fortnightly pay. Once I've got all these covered, then I have my allowance left over that I can spend. And if there's anything that I don't spend, and I do try not to, but I do slip up occasionally, whatever's left over just also goes into saving as well, as a bonus sort of savings. Does that sort of cover off? But by no means am I an angel in how I do spend the money. So yes.
Good to know. Thank you. And also, can you maybe talk to us about how you've personally started to plan for your own retirement?
Well, as I said, I think when I first started work, my first job when I was 17 years old, I had no option but to join. I was in a bank, and I had no option but to join the bank superannuation scheme, and I never missed the money. It was coming out right from day one, and I guess that I've always worked on that philosophy since, that my superannuation comes out first, and you very, very quickly learn to live within what's left over. You're told on day one what your pay is, and goes into your bank account, and that's what you've got to spend. And I've always kind of just kept it at that level, made sure that my retirement savings, and when it shifted across to KiwiSaver, followed exactly the same philosophy. So yes, save first, because trust me, 65 comes around a lot quicker than you really anticipate. When you're 25, it seems like a whole lifetime away, but I think with about 50, it really starts to gallop towards you. So yeah, you can't stop. You just, having a savings philosophy will always stand you in good stead, I think. So yes. So Kelley, I think that I should really ask you a question. So rather than me just being on the pointy end of all this. So many of my clients themselves actually do struggle with the budgeting and goal setting process. how do you set your own goals, and what do you do? And, you know, what do you find hard and challenging about doing that?
Question. So I do set short to medium term goals. I quite enjoy that. And I think I've learned over the years that my style is such that I like to make them quite visual. And what I mean by that is, let me give you an example. About a year ago, I thought I want to paint the house. So I did all my planning first, but I've spent a lot of time a year ago deciding what the colour was. So I knew exactly what the house would look like once it was painted. And then I got my quotes, obviously, and I've now saved up and just started to paint the house. So I often use pictures and visual cues just to keep me on track. Retirement savings goals are a little bit harder at, I'm not lying. And I know what I should be doing, but I could be better. But I guess I've also spoken to my clients a lot over the years when it comes to retirement savings goals, and recommended they start to think about what would a week look like for them post-retirement. So to try and bring that to life and then get a sense of how much money you can work backwards from that. I normally suggest, and I've done this for myself, those nights when you can't sleep, I normally suggest you think about that week in context of maybe after you've retired, you've had 3 months off because it's all quite new and fun, and then what does that week look like for you? So yeah, I do some, but not perfect. Anyhow, look, oh, sorry, Anne.
I was going to say none of us are perfect, and I think that, you know, life is always about learning along the way, and yeah, and I also wanted to say that I like the fact that with planning to paint the house that you actually went in and sorted the colour out first rather than going in for the quotes and the dollars. So I think, you know, my view would be it was getting the colour right in the first instance was the priority. So yes.
It's a strange time of year to be painting a house, but never mind. Anyhow, look, we'll move on. The next topic we're covering is risk, so it's a meaty one.
Thanks, Kelley. So managing risks, and as you can see there, understanding risk is critical to meeting your long-term investing goals. And as I said, each of the different assets and ways of investing, they carry their own risks. And some of the things that just need to be considered, and again, you know, risk is a really broad topic and probably is best kind of discussed like individually in terms of your own individual circumstances. But here are some terms and some kind of broad explanations of what you may come across when you're thinking about risk in a financial sense. And probably first and foremost, it's really about understanding the relationship between risk and return. And we've heard the old adages, you know, about there's no such thing as a free lunch. That, you know, and if it looks too good to be true, it probably is. And that's kind of that cryptocurrency thing as well. Everybody gets on a bandwagon on something and says, you know, this is the best thing since sliced bread, but doesn't actually talk about the risks associated with it. And it's, as a financial advisor, I think one of the first things that you learn is that the higher the return, then potentially the higher the risk of the investment that you go into. But, you know, not all risk is bad. You know, that's the other thing, is that, you know, you can get into the thing of I'm too frightened to do that's too risky for me. What mitigates risk ultimately in the first instance is understanding it and understanding how it's going to affect you and your circumstances. So and learning and education is key to that as well. I can remember once talking about risk, this is just a weird side, years and years ago I had this client who he had a very nice Porsche, and he used to take it out for track days at the local Ruapuna Raceway, it was here in Christchurch. And, you know, he'd barrel this, you know, $100,000+ car around Ruapuna Raceway at 200 kilometres an hour. And when I talked to him about, he was really risk averse. And when I talked to him about, you know, investing in markets, oh no, that's way too risky for me, I don't like risk at all. But he was happy to, you know, put his $100,000 car to the test on the racetrack. So risk needs to be put into a context that you understand, and learning about it is part of that. So other types of risk that we look at is, you know, like a specific risk here is that's the risk that's associated with one asset. So one particular company, one particular industry, or one particular sector. And it's kind of like if all your eggs are in that basket, that one basket, and that basket drops, then really and truly you've just got an omelette on the floor. So specific risk is the risk associated with one particular sector or asset. Volatility and market risk. Volatility in itself, and it's a word that financial advisors throw around all the time about everything's so volatile at the moment, and understanding that is it's about how much an investment or an asset moves away from its expected outcome, and that can be a sharp rise downwards, which is kind of what we're seeing at the moment, but it's also a sharp rise upwards, because if an investment moves unexpectedly upwards, then it kind of indicates aspects of it that weren't taken into consideration when its attributes were being analysed in the first instance. So volatility is how much an investment or an asset moves away from its expected return or expected outcome. Market risk, that's the sort of things that we can't, I guess, diversify away. And by diversification, it means that that's spreading of your funds across a range of different assets. So market risk, that can't be diversified away. So market risk are those things like global or local economic conditions, political change, regulatory change, natural disasters like earthquakes, storms, conflict, all of those things that will the Ukraine conflict would be a really good example of that. When Russia invaded the Ukraine, the markets reacted, and there was, you could have the best company that you're invested in, it will still have been affected by that geopolitical event. So market risk are those aspects that we can't diversify away, they just happen. Liquidity risk, this is one that people often don't think about too closely, and it's about how quickly can you get hold of your cash if you need to, how quickly can you asset. A term deposit, for example, it's locked in until a certain date. Now, most banks will have a capacity for you to draw on it, if you provide 31 days notice, and there may be a cost involved in doing that. So the liquidity around that is a month away. If you invest all your funds into an investment property, a residential property, say you spend $600,000 on a residential investment property and you need to lay your hands on 100,000, then it's not as liquid. You can't sell off the front room, you've got to sell the whole thing, and then there's the time involved in going through that process. So it's really important when you're thinking about liquidity is, do you need to have access to any portion of cash at short notice, and where do you invest your funds to make sure you protect yourself on that basis? So how do you reduce these risks? So as I mentioned, diversification is probably top of the line for, a lot of financial advisors will talk to you about diversification, and that's just essentially investing across a range of different asset types, shares, bonds, a variety of different internationally, globally, so different industries, different countries, and that just spreads the risk across all those different investment types, if you like. Dollar cost averaging is another really good one, and again, if you're in KiwiSaver, then you are just naturally dollar cost averaging at the moment, and that's how to dollar cost average, or what it actually means is that you're averaging into an investment with regular deposits. So if you invest $100 per month, and in month one the unit price is $1, you receive 100 units. Say in month two that unit price goes up, so that it costs more, say to $1.10, you only receive 91 units for your $100 spend. But then say month three, the unit price falls to 90 cents, you receive 111 units for your $100. So I look at what the markets are doing at the moment, and for anybody that's in KiwiSaver, and particularly, young people, it's fantastic. It's like buying baked beans on special, because your $100 that you're putting into your KiwiSaver is now buying you so many more units because the values have fallen at the moment. But over time, we know that markets go up and down, and dollar cost averaging smooths out those pricing risks and those timing risks of when is the right time to buy into the market. So, and again, I just sort of finished that off with understanding that if you need to get access to funds, you should always maintain an emergency cash fund to one side. And I know that's been challenging over the last couple of years with interest rates being so low. People don't like putting money in a savings account that's not earning anything. But you look at what is the value of being able to lay your hands on some cash quickly if you need to. So I think that covers off all that section, I think.
Thanks, Anne. So let's just recap. So far, Anne's talked to us about the importance of setting goals, making a plan, making a budget and planning to spend. She's covered some key investment asset classes, and we've just talked about managing risk. So next, we're going to talk about the importance of review, and this is often a stage or a step that people often don't put a plan around. Anne.
Review, yes, thanks, Kelley. Again, I think that the points here really do cover it off, and it's about, what are the events that trigger a review, and we can see, market changes, loss of income, all of those things, major life events, getting married, children, finding yourself suddenly single. All of those things should trigger a review of not just your, for your finances in terms of your investments. It should also potentially trigger a review in terms of your other asset and life protection needs as well, like wills and enduring powers of attorney. Those sorts of things are really important as well. But we shouldn't just wait for these major events to trigger reviews as well. We should make it a discipline, a part of our goal setting and planning process to review regularly. And, if you've got a financial advisor, then they will probably be naturally doing that on an annual basis. But we should all just sit down, and tax time's a good time to do that, because we kind of sit down and assess, what's gone in and out, and, how much we owe the IRD or they owe us. So that in itself is a really good time to just sit down and make sure you're doing what you need to do for your financial future.
So as a financial advisor, Anne, how do you get your clients to review their plans regularly?
Well, again, I guess it's part of most financial advisors' practice that they will sit down with their clients at least annually and review what their goals are they on track for it, what events, because life's not linear, and there are things that happen along the way. So what's kind of happened to maybe impact on the goals? Do they need to be revisited? And what does the future look like from that point on as well? So it's really about making sure the financial advisor's role, so my role, is to check in with the client regularly, and often with many of my clients is more than once a year. And it's about having a relationship with the client, so I actually understand what they're wanting to do. And, most financial advisors, you can hear me now, we love to talk, and we love to talk to our clients. So you find a relationship with somebody that you connect with and who will be your financial coach as you go forward.
Great advice. Thanks, Anne. Look, we're going to change the topic slightly, and next we've chosen two financial concepts that Anne's going to talk you through. And it was interesting, we put the seminar together about 4 or 5 months ago, and one of those concepts has become quite a hot topic as of late, but again, it's relevant. So we'll move on, and I'll hand back to Anne.
Yes, thanks, Kelley. So yes, and inflation, it is all we hear about at the moment, and inflation seems to be the what's the word I'm looking for? So like the fault of everything, all the evils that are happening in the financial world at the moment, sort of being laid at the door of inflation. But what does it actually mean? And to put it in real terms, because most of us, inflation is just a word. So what does inflation mean to us? And ultimately, it's the increased cost of things. So to understand, how does inflation work over time? I had a look on, there's one of the government websites I had a look at, and a basket of food that cost you $100 in the first quarter of the year 2000, that same basket of food in the first quarter of this year, so it's probably gone up a bit since then as well, would now cost you $170. So by that same calculation, when you think about it, nothing actually beats the value of that first dollar that you save as well. So it's, you know, that first dollar that you saved would actually buy you more now as well. So the sooner you start saving, the better, and you invest in growth assets, so you along the way, to make sure that you'll keep at least keeping pace with inflation and hopefully ahead of it. You know. Compounding interest, it's magic. We should be teaching our children the concept of compounding interest, because, you know, it's a way, even if you've just got your money in a savings account, it's doing its stuff in the background behind you. So, you know, you earn the interest adds on to the principal that was there in the first instance, and then you earn interest on that new sum, and so on it goes. And you can see by the graph there how quickly interest can add to the value and grow your investment without you actually ever having to do anything yourself. So understanding compound interest is a good way to start with financial concepts. And ultimately, you know, education is the key, is the heading there as well. And it's about learning, learn, just continue to learn. I'm learning all the time as well. So, you know, it's about reading information that comes across you. There's a vast array of resources now and sources of information. And for everybody that's here today, you know, you're already doing that. You know, you're participating in learning a bit more about finance and what have you. And it's also talking and sharing stories with your family and friends. So talking about it is another great way to learn, and all of us to learn. We pick up different tips on different ways to do things, and we get a really good understanding of how it all works. And hopefully we can avoid some pitfalls and also get some, you know, some guidance on getting the right advice and participating in our financial futures. Yes, and so financial advice, and you know, there are many studies out there that show that there is real value in seeking professional advice, and that's from helping you to stay on track with your goals, educating and helping you to understand the different types of investments for you, and providing guidance along the way. You know, there is an advisor out there that will match your personality and what you're looking to achieve. But I'd also throw in there that as individuals, we all have a responsibility to be active participants in our financial lives, and, you know, to just continually look for those opportunities to learn and to challenge ourselves and the women in our lives to be on the right path for our own financial security. And that again is about talking to our mothers, our sisters, our aunts, our friends. Just talk and learn.
So thanks, Anna. Just have a look at the questions. We've got a question here, Anne, and it was, I like this one, is now a good time to buy property?
Oh. My disclosure there is that you can never time the market on anything. Who knows whenever the good time to buy a property is, and it all comes back to what is your purpose and what is your goal for buying property. What are you looking to achieve? You know, I'm not an expert on property investment per se, but I would sort of say that whatever you buy or invest in, or, you know, it comes down to what your goal is, what your purpose is. If you're looking at buying a property for yourself, then, you know, I speak from my own experience, I guess. When I bought my first house, I needed to buy a house. You know, I needed to find somewhere to live, and I have no idea what, you know, this was way back in 1986, I think it was. I have no idea whether property values were high, low, or indifferent in comparison to the times. It just matched in with the goals that I had at the time. So that's a kind of a I don't know what sort of answer that is, but yeah.
Well done. Hey, look, thank you for that. That's all our questions. I just want to thank everyone for their time today. This is a snippet of where you should get started. As a thank you, we're going to email you out a short guide, which will talk about some of the concepts we've spoken about today. Please, as Anne said, continue to talk to each other about this. It's a really important conversation to have. And it was interesting. I'll close my section. I'll let Anne finish off. It'll be the final word. But in preparing for this, we were talking about what the advice would be that we would give our 18-year-old selves. And the advice I would actually give my 18-year-old self is to learn to take more risk when it comes to investing. I'm naturally quite conservative, so I guess my challenge to everyone on the call is don't forget risk isn't always bad. So Anne, if I can hand over to you.
Thanks, Kelley. And look, as I see, we kind of galloped along through this as well. I got through it very quickly. So we've given you back some time for the afternoon as well, which is always a good thing. And just, yeah, thank you everyone for joining us today. Coming back to that sort of advice that you'd give yourself, I actually came across this wee snippet the other day, was wee quote, which was in this larger document, which was the 103 bits of advice that I'd give myself. And for those that are heading for the door, I'm not going to do all 103, but the one that kind of resonated with me, when I read it, was about focus on directions rather than destinations, because who knows their destiny, but maintain the right direction and you'll arrive at where you want to go. Now that doesn't take away from any ultimate goal, but it does make sure that you stay on path, and it kind of makes sure that you enjoy the journey as well. And I guess if I was to leave you with one final thought, it would be to reiterate that don't be a passive participant in your financial future. And I think as women, we have traditionally not been front-footed in this space. Take the opportunity to read and listen to a variety of information that's out there. Be careful about the information that's just noise in the market, and just, you approach it with a little touch of salt, I think, as you're reading things, but do just learn. I can't say it strongly enough. And of course, feel free to contact us, via our website, and if you've got any questions as well following on from today, and if we can help in any way, just give us a yell. Happy to chat.
Thank you.
So yes, thank you.